you the WWE Hall of Famers, Vince Lawler, J.P. Lawler, and the Mountain South Jimmy Hart.
Wait a minute. Is he really in the Hall of Fame?
Yes. He got inducted the same year Hulk Hogan did, 2005.
Wait, hold it. Wait a minute.
All true.
He got in the Hall of Fame before me?
Yes.
Hey, I went to New York before you. If you remember, they called me first.
Okay.
Let me get you some cookies.
Anyway, my first general question is how you guys get your start in wrestling. I'll start with the Sarge.
Well, I happened to walk in on a pro wrestling training camp with a friend of mine who was doing a story on him, and got asked to get into the ring to show that everybody who was there doing the story, that everything was real and legitimate. So for John, you had Billy Robinson at a camp in Minnesota, and I said Uncle Sam many times and Tap many times. That's how I was brought into it. When I first walked in, it was in an old barn, and when I first walked in, I looked up into the ring, which was in the corner of this barn with a light bulb hanging down, and haystacks and chickens and cows, everything running around. I noticed there was 4 or 5 of the trainees that I wrestled in high school, so I was just off a roof. I was roofing with my father, and just cleaned up and walked into this barn, and I went, maybe I'm in the wrong business. If these guys should be wrestlers, maybe I should give it a thought. So that's how I got inducted into it.
Okay, next two people, they got their start, and everybody, or go ahead.
How I got my start? I get asked, excuse me, I get asked a lot of people, like, how do you become a wrestler? And it's like you just heard from Sarge, and especially my story, no two wrestlers get started the same way. And I don't know of anybody that ever got started the way I did. I started by, my whole life as a kid growing up, I was gonna be a comic book artist. I drew Superman and Batman all my life, and that's what I wanted to do was draw for DC Comics or Marvel Comics or something someday. And then I got exposed to watching wrestling on TV when I was just maybe a junior or senior in high school. And my dad was a wrestling fan, so we started going to the matches, the live matches, and I saw these guys and I thought, wow, these guys are like real live superheroes. So I started drawing some pictures of wrestlers. And one day one of the fans at the matches saw some of my artwork, and they said, you ought to send those in to the TV station that airs wrestling. So I drew several pictures of, at that time, the biggest star in wrestling in Memphis, Tennessee was Jackie Fargo, and there was Tojo Yamamoto, and these guys had this big rivalry. So I drew pictures of Jackie Fargo wrestling Tojo Yamamoto, sent them to the TV station, and not expecting anything really, turned to my TV on the next Saturday morning, and good old Lance Russell and Dave Brown were our commentators, and they're sitting there welcoming everybody to the show. And I'm sitting at home on TV, watching it on TV, and there I saw my drawings were sitting on his desk. And I said, oh my gosh, he's gonna show my artwork. Sure enough, about halfway through the show, he said, Dave, look at this, we got some artwork from a young fan. I'd written my name on the back. He said, Jerry Lawler out there, drew these great pictures, check us out, Jackie Fargo, Tojo Yamamoto. Anyway, he showed them, and I was just in seventh heaven, as a kid in a candy store. This is great. And I wasn't expecting anything to come out of it, but after the show went off the air, I put my phone number on the back, and Lance Russell, the announcer, actually called me and said, hey, everybody loved your artwork, especially Jackie Fargo. And I'm thinking, this would be like a kid getting a call saying, hey, The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin loved your artwork, right? And they said, we want you to come over to the station next week. Jackie Fargo wants to meet you, and he has a job for you to do some artwork for him. So the next week I got to go over and got to meet all of the big stars, the big famous wrestlers in person. And I was just basically right out of high school. And I look back on it and I think Jackie and I became friends. Jackie and Fargo also had a nightclub in Memphis, and what he wanted me to do was paint pictures of himself and his partner all over the walls inside his club, right? And so I'm working diligently day in and day out down there painting and everything. And I said, I thought Jackie and I became friends, and when I look back on it later, I became Jackie's stooge. I was his gopher, right? But I thought, man, he and I are best friends. And anyway, finally one day, he let me start going to the actual shows with him, driving to towns within 50 miles of Memphis and that sort of thing. And I just saw, what the business was like kind of from the inside, and just loved it. And I started begging him, can you just please, all I really wanted to do was just like be on TV, so that my friends that grew up with me in the neighborhood could say, look, Jerry Lawler's on TV. I just thought that would be the coolest thing ever. And I said, just throw me in there with the big stars and let them beat me up. That's all I did. So anyway, long story short, too late for that. But that's basically how I got into it. He finally relented and threw me out there, and I lost matches for a solid year before I ever won one, and the rest is history. He told me though, the first time, he said, I'm gonna stick my neck out. I'm gonna call the promoter, Nick Goulas, and I'm gonna tell him to book this kid. He said, but you gotta promise me, you gotta keep your promise, because I told him, if you just let me try this one time, I promise you I'll go back to being an artist. I won't bother you anymore. So he made me make that promise, but anyway, I started, and 52 years later, I'm still doing it. But I also keep up with Hart, so he wouldn't be mad. He knows that I still do artwork.
Well, you have some history with the next book I'm gonna ask. Jimmy Hart, how did you get your start in wrestling?
This man right here, Jerry the King Lawler, we went to school together, Treadwell High School. He went to wrestling, I went to music. And one day I got a phone call from the people that worked with him and said, Jerry Lawler's cutting a wrestling album. He'd love for you to help him on it. I said, man, I love it, because I always loved the wrestling. Back before I got to meet Lawler, I was part of a group called the Gentrys.
Yeah, tell him that.
We were touring with Dick Clark all over the country, and every city we'd go to. We were in Texas. I'd get up early on Saturday morning. Oh, the Von Erichs. If I was in the Carolinas, I'd get up on Saturday morning, before we did the shows at night with the Beach Boys and them, and I go, oh my God, there's Ric Flair. And same thing in Atlanta with Dusty Rhodes, and it went on and on and on. But in Memphis, Lawler was the king. But before that, I'd watch Sputnik Monroe and Billy Wicks and Jackie Fargo and everybody. But that's how it really started for me. He got me really into it. And I've been.
But he never tells the part that I was a big fan of his, because he was in this group called the Gentrys from Treadwell High School, where I grew up and graduated from, and they had a hit song in '65. Yeah, Keep On Dancing. I mean, that song went to #1. They knocked the Beatles off the chart, and I was the biggest Beatles fan ever. And I mean, then all of a sudden, this guy's had a #1 hit record all over the world, and he went to my high school, and it was just the coolest thing ever.
But the cool thing for me is when he called me to ask me to help him on an album, I was like, oh my God, you won't believe who called me. Jerry Lawler. What? Because listen, 7 out of every 10 TVs in Memphis watch wrestling every Saturday morning for an hour and a half. And
so that was like when Lance Russell called me and said, Jackie Fargo wants to meet you, right?
But you're right, when you called me, I was like, oh my gosh, oh my. So the rest was history.
Okay, what was your first promotion that you started in, and the first championship you won in that promotion? I'll start with the king this time.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, the first promotion that I started in was, of course, Memphis, Tennessee was my home. That's where I lived, and that was the biggest promoted city in the Goulas-Welch territory. And it was Nick Goulas and Roy Welch, and they had been promoting wrestling. Their office was in Nashville, and they promoted all the cities within like a 200-mile radius of Nashville. That included like Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, all the state of Kentucky, Evansville, Indiana, Southern Indiana, all the state of Tennessee, Northern Alabama, Northern Mississippi. That was their territory. And so they had been promoting that since maybe the late 40s or early 50s at least. And so that's where I got my start. And actually the very first time I was in a wrestling ring was, I guess people would call it like an independent show these days, or outlaw wrestling is what we called it back in those days.
Yeah.
There was a little outlaw promotion over in West Memphis, Arkansas, that I didn't even know about. I was a big fan, and I didn't even know that was there, but, this kid came in wanted to meet Jackie Fargo one day, and I was down at the club, and this kid didn't look any bigger than me, and he said, yeah, I'm a wrestler, I just came down from St. Louis, and I wanted to talk to Jackie about getting booked around here. And I said, well, how do you do that? I mean, how do you become a wrestler? And then he kind of smartened me up to the fact that you gotta start somewhere usually other than the big promotion. And he said, there's a little bitty wrestling, promotion across the river, West Memphis, Arkansas. And he took me over there and introduced me to Aubrey Griffith, who's still alive today.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not, but Aubrey Griffith is still around today. And he was an old ex-wrestler that had wrestled for Gulas and Welch, and he, didn't get booked anymore, so he started his own little territory, so to speak, in West Memphis, Arkansas, had an old rundown movie theater that had been abandoned. And I'm gonna ask you, you probably did something like this. To me, when I went in there, it looked like Madison Square Garden, but in reality, it was an old rundown movie theater that he took about 20 rows of seats out of the front and put a ring there, and above the ring was an old galvanized metal wash tub.
Yeah.
And then inside that wash tub was about 4 or 5 150-watt light bulbs, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever wrestle in a place like that?
Oh, yeah.
So, and I looked up at that and I thought, I finally hit I'm really in wrestling. This is the big time. But anyway, that's where I had my first start, and I've wrestled over there like 3 times, and Jackie Fargo got wind of it, and that's when he came to me and said, look, kid, I'm gonna stick my neck out. I'm gonna get you some matches for Nick Gulas, but you gotta promise you won't do that crap over in West Memphis anymore.
And what was your first championship that you hold?
Well, when I first got in the business, I've had a meeting with, I met some young kid. I just thought he was just some punk actually. And I was wrestling in Huntsville, Alabama, and I thought I was really hot stuff. And I went out first match, and I did some flips and flops and all this kind of stuff. And I came back, and this what I thought was a young punk, he sat down beside me, blonde-headed kid. He didn't look any older than me, and he said, "Hey, I watched your match, and it was really good and everything. But I would suggest that you do this or do that or whatever." And I just listened to him, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, you wrestle your way and I'll wrestle mine."
Right.
Well, I didn't know, but that little kid was Jerry Jarrett.
Oh.
And he was booking for Nick Gulas and Roy Welch at the time. So immediately the next week, I got sent down to Montgomery, Alabama, which was like the little developmental territory where it was like you were outcast if you got put down there.
Yeah.
But I stayed down there for several months, and I became I think they call the Alabama heavyweight champion. I think that was and then they put me with this wrestler named Jim White, and they put Sam Bass with me.
Yeah.
And we became the Alabama State Tag Team Champions. So that was the first titles that I actually won.
Okay, Jimmy, this is gonna be a different question for you since you were a manager. Who was the first champion that you managed?
Right next to me, Jerry the King Lawler, baby. First territory Memphis, first person I managed Memphis.
Did you ever win? Surely at one point we let you became the champion somehow down there, did you?
Well, remember we had that handicap match. It was Wayne Ferris. I was managing Kevin Sullivan and Wayne Ferris. So Lawler had broken his leg playing football.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the stipulations of him coming back, we played the spin the wheel deal. And we threw the thing, and I won a match with Jerry the King Lawler, but on my conditions. So I made sure we fought Lawler that night. I had a special referee, which was Kevin Sullivan. I had my tag team partner with me, which was Wayne Ferris, and Jerry had one hand tied behind his back. So I thought, man, if I don't win it now, I'm never gonna win it. Then I won the belt. And
That was Southern Heavyweight Championship.
Southern Heavyweight, and then Dundee runs in the dressing room and goes to Jarrett. Jarrett was in the back. You know, Jarrett always had that stuff going, spitting at the thing, tobacco. He runs it back. Jarrett goes, well, how was it? How was it? Dundee goes, oh, it's the wrong kind of heat. Oh my God. You could have dropped a pin out there. Oh my God, it was bad. Now I'm going, oh my God, this could be next week the worst house in the history of houses. And I didn't even book it, right? So now, Jerry's mother worked the ticket booth at the Coliseum, right? So.
She sold our advance tickets.
Right, and so I go in the next week. Now, we did radio, TV all week long, man. I did Ron Olson show, we did FM 100, you know, cause I'm really worried going, oh my God, so I'm on the, you know, setting up my family with this. They were with me and promote this thing, me and Lawler goes on TV and goes, let me tell you something, Jimmy Hart, I promise you this, you're gonna leave next week in an ambulance. You're gonna leave with blood streaming down your head, which automatically I'm going, oh shit, I don't want that. Let me just give the belt back, I don't even want it anymore, please. So this is what's gonna happen to you doing it, so I went, oh my God, but, so now,
Did we draw?
but here's what happened,
Oh,
so
okay.
now, I go in by the ticket booth, hey, Miss Lawler, hey, Jimmy, she goes, oh man, we've got a great advance tonight, I said, really? She goes, we got X amount up, she told me what it was, cause I knew if we did this, we always tripled it,
Yeah.
and then we had another $5,000 or $6,000 on top of that, so I went, oh my God,
Yeah, it
that's
was almost a
awesome.
$10,000 advance.
Now, I walk in the thing, right? Lawler goes, come here, let me talk to you. He goes, oh my God, man, did you hear it's the worst house we're gonna have tonight on the other? Now I'm selling it because I know that she told me the difference. I went, oh no, I didn't wanna do it. He goes, no, I'm just kidding with you. I went, oh my God. And, so that turned, and so that was the very first time really doing that.
Southern Heavyweight Championship, that's cool.
And so then I made up a belt called the Southern Handicap Champion. And so I remember I went on TV and I went, and this is really the truth though, I said, when I was growing up in Jackson, Mississippi, I felt a horrible fever, I ached all over. My mother took me to the doctor and he said, Miss Hart, I got some bad news for you. Little Jimmy's got polio. And I went, oh my God, cause that was a big thing, polio back then. They really thought I had it, so he's got polio. So they put me in the hospital. And the doctor came in and I heard my mother talking. She goes, how is it? He goes, it's gonna be nip, it's gonna be tuck. It's gonna be nip and tuck. It's gonna be tuck and nip. It's gonna be nip. I kept doing this over and over. And finally, I came out, I beat it, and now I'm the Southern Handicap Champion. I made my own belt, right?
Yeah.
Made myself, hey, and I said, who you fight this week? No, I'm not putting the belt up. Lawler let me do all this. I'm not putting it up. So then Lawler goes, you're putting it up next week. So he fought Lawler and he took it along with my gold album and threw it off the Memphis, Arkansas bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, now the album, we spray painted it, Lawler did, it made it look unbelievable, looked better than a real gold album. So we threw it off the thing, but when he threw it, it goes woo, 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 and it wasn't heavy, so it hit the water, bam.
It's floated.
It's floated. Lawler goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So people in the boats trying to get to the
It's
damn
supposed to
thing.
be a gold album, right?
Oh, now, so now it just stays on top of the thing. But we had about 800 or 900 people that were on the bridge that morning, which Channel 5 filmed, because everything he did was involved with, it drew. And when he threw that, he said, tomorrow morning, I'm gonna see everybody out there next, I'm gonna throw it off, and he threw it over, the bridge was packed, the police were out there and everything. And that was almost the time.
Oh, I remember that so well.
Well,
we put the record, you know, I spray painted it all gold, just a regular
Right,
record.
great
you know,
job.
I spray painted it all gold, and then we put it in a
Beautiful frame.
frame and everything, right? And so, and the bridge was, we're super high.
Oh,
so
unbelievable.
when everybody's cameras going and everything, and I threw that frame and everything, and when it went down, the frame busted all to pieces and it disappeared, but the gold album just floated.
Right on the float. Lawler's going, oh my God, if they get to that, oh my God. Well, don't blame me, I'm sure but the craziest thing we had to do, me and Jesse the Body of Ventura fought Jerry Lawler and the San Diego Chicken. Because
Yeah.
Lawler loved baseball back in the day, he brought the chicken in, right? So now, but the loser of the match, whether it was me or Jesse, had to wear the chicken outfit for a week around Memphis. If you went to eat, you wore it. If you were downtown, you had to wear it and everything else. Well, of course, I
Chicken
lost.
suit.
So now I wear the chicken suit the whole time. Chicken suit to go eat, chicken suit to go shopping, chicken suit all over the town for a whole week, right? And trust me, it was hard when you had to take a poo-poo, because when you sit down, I had to pull the bottom part down. I was like this, reading the paper. One day Jimmy Cornette came in and he goes, what the hell are you doing? And I had the little beak up on top of this trying to read it before the matches. And of course he took pictures of it and everything else, but it was crazy. We had some crazy gimmicks down there that he put together, but they all drew money. I mean, it's crazy. It's unreal. That was entertainment.
Yeah.
Now, with the sergeant, what was your first championship?
Well, I don't know if it was a championship. I didn't realize what it was at the time, when I was telling you about when I got into that training camp. I slid out of the ring And, Vergania said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I don't see any reason to stay in here any longer." He said, "Too tough for you?" I said, "No, you guys are taking advantage of me and putting all these holes on me." He said, "Advantage? Oh, you think you could do better?" I said, "Well, better than I was doing." He said, "Well, get back in here." So he said, "Get down on all fours." So he yells out, "Rick, you get on it first." And I knew there was a God, because Rick was Rick Flair.
Yeah.
And I used to beat Rick in wrestling in high school all the time, so. Rick said, "I got a bad elbow, coach." I don't care what you got, you get